Welcome to Even Field, the sports podcast that puts women first. I'm Eileen.
And I'm Josie. And today we're going to be taking a look at this past weekend's games for Creighton and Nebraska. We said last week, you're already like hissing. We said last week how they were kind of like a weirdly similar setup, if you will.
Scenario with just who they were playing and the circumstances.
The circumstances. Oddly enough, those coincidences kind of carried into the game in what we would characterize as the worst way possible.
In the worst way possible, yes. Unfortunately, we were too correct in our predictions about coincidental games.
Yeah. But before we get into that, we're going to do a new segment because Eileen was actually at the Creighton game. And this new segment is called In-Game Text from Eileen, where I read texts Eileen sent me while on the court.
So sometimes, there's timeouts and, I get stressed and I start texting Josie little updates from the game.
Yeah. So here are some of the highlights. Quote, I shouldn't have mentioned UConn, ... at all, ... 12-0, cringe face.
Yeah.
And then another one would be, my phone is freaking out. Oh, there we go. Okay. I shouldn't have uttered the UConn name, ... I feel like I jinxed them. They couldn't buy a basket right now.
Yikes.
That one I responded to with 3 crying faces.
Yep.
And then the final one I want to share is in all capital letters. Oh my God, this Maddie girl is killing us. She's covered, but she keeps doing jump fadeaways. That's kind of the whole game.
Yeah, that was the gist. That's a pretty good summary of what happened in the Creighton-Villanova game. It was 73-57. Creighton had a slow start yet again, and they keep talking about how they shouldn't have slow starts, and they did it again.
And it didn't pay off.
And they only scored 6 points in the first quarter.
All off of free throws.
All free throws. They could not score one basket from the court. And I just want to play a little clip that Coach Jim Flannery, he was talking about just the game and their start, their rough start after the Villanova game. So this is a little bit of what he said.
Yeah, they jumped on us, and it was never a game. I mean, probably should have used a timeout even earlier than 12-0, and probably should have used about 3 of them in that first quarter. So, defensively, I thought our communication really let us down, our communication and awareness and willingness to be connected on defense really let us down in the first quarter. And I know the stats say we also were 0 for 15 in the first quarter, and that's contributes, but just really disappointed.
Coach Flannery wasn't too happy. And again, he's talking about that lack of communication, which he talked about in their last loss. They need to communicate on defense, but they also need to score some points. So their first actual basket from the court came in the second quarter at the 7:44 mark. Lauren Jensen scored a basket, and the crowd cheered it in Sokol, but it was more like a relieved / exasperated cheer. It was like, oh God, okay, thank you. They can actually still score from the court. We weren't sure. We weren't sure.
Yeah, I mean, the struggles. 0 for 15 in the field, 0 and 6 on 3-pointers, and they shoot a lot of shoot and make a lot of 3-pointers normally.
And it was like deja vu just watching Morgan Molly and among others, like just shoot from the three-point line and just boom, hit the rim, just fall out.
Yeah.
And then they didn't get the rebound, so.
Eileen thinks she's a jinx at this point.
I'm a little fearful that I should stop going to their big games because this keeps happening. Okay, but I did attend the game where they beat Nebraska, so I attended a game where they won. But and then last episode we talked about how big of an impact Maddie Siegrist would have. But she can't win the whole game by herself. So he said, make sure you cover other players. Well, in the first quarter, she only scored 2 baskets, and Maddie Burke scored 5 3-pointers. She was 5 for 6. And Lucy Olson also had a really good game for them as well. So it's like, Maddie Siegrist scored plenty of points. She scored 23 points. But in the first quarter, it wasn't her that was dominating them.
And the first quarter is where they, really, truly dominated.
Yeah. And, I'm sure, if the same player, Maddie Burke, over and over again scores that many 3-pointers on you, I'm sure that just is not a boost for your confidence. And when you can't sink any threes.
Yeah, and it just feels like there's no way to catch up. I agree with Flannery. They probably needed a timeout earlier.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They needed to stop Villanova's momentum.
Just a reset, and just for them, because I feel like it snowballs. And, yeah, like you said, they spiral, and they just needed to stop the momentum and just restart.
Yeah, take a breath. Anything
to stop the run that Villanova was on. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned last week they needed to, like you said, Maddie she's gonna make her points. She's gonna do it. You need to guard everyone. They struggled there. Part of that's that defensive communication he's talking about. I mean, but it seemed to kind of repair itself, at least offensively, in the second half.
Right, yeah. They actually came out after halftime, and they scored more points than Villanova in the third and fourth quarters. But again, they kind of dug themselves into a hole.
Yeah, I mean, they were down 27 at halftime. That's a big hole.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to win with what they scored in the second half, they had to hold Villanova to 10 points.
Which wasn't going to happen.
It wasn't going to happen. In fact, Villanova scored that over that in each quarter.
Right. And by that time, Maddie Siegrist had turned it on, and she just kept, she was covered. The defense was on her, and she would just jump backwards. The ball would go right in the basket. And sometimes I was like, there's no way this is going in. Oh, no, every single one. It was just like, well, she's a good player. And actually, in this game, she became, with her 23 points, she became the all-time leading scorer at Villanova. So it was really nice. Creighton actually did an announcement, and they were going to give her the game ball. And she's a really talented player. And, in her press conference, you could tell she's a very humble, hardworking player. So that was really good for her. But again, it wasn't just her that beat them. I think Creighton kind of beat themselves in a way.
It kind of beat themselves. The struggles on defense are obvious. The offensive struggles in the first half, super obvious.
Missing routine shots, layups, 3-pointers.
I think they just got
they
got in their own head. They missed a couple early, and it spiraled. I'm not sure. I mean, they had 4 finished with 10 or more points, which is great. 2 were off the bench. At one point, I think Flannery took all the starters out and put everyone on the bench.
He did.
Maybe kept them in a little longer than should have, but that's, you gotta do something.
Shake it up. Yeah, I think he was trying to shake it up a little bit or prove a point, but yeah, I think again he harped on in the press conference. He harped on the communication, the lack of communication. He was most disappointed in that, and I mean.
That makes sense. It was a loss. They're going to have to shake it off.
Right.
They got another big game coming up tonight.
Right. They're going to play Providence, so.
Who they've already lost to this season. So that's tonight at 6. It's going to be on Flow Sports. Your favorite.
And it's a big game, and especially just momentum-wise, confidence-wise, they need to come out strong. They cannot, I know we keep saying this, but they cannot have a slow start.
No, they need
not in this.
They need to play a full 40 minutes, and that 40 minutes needs to start when the clock starts in that first quarter.
Right, exactly.
Friars are 12-9, 3-7 in the Big Ten or Big East, excuse me. So on paper, it looks like Creighton should beat them, but they've already lost. One of those wins is the Creighton win, or win over Creighton, excuse me. So this I mean, in the loss, Morgan Malley had a really big night. She had 30 points. Obviously, it'd be excellent if she could do that again.
Right. Yeah, I hope she can kind of break that again. Maybe I'm the bad luck, so perhaps they'll do just great with me not there.
Well, that also was they needed to play a full 40 minutes. It was their third quarter in that game that really cost them. So, I mean,
they just got to play a complete game.
Yeah,
I think.
I don't know how else to state it at this point. But we should probably move on to Nebraska.
Yes, which oddly was a little too similar for
Yeah,
us.
I mean, just to just kind of creepy was they both had top 25 matchups. Both were at home. Both were against teams they'd already beaten. And then both lost. And lost specifically because of really slow offensive starts.
And even crazier, Nebraska also only scored 6 points in the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't all from free throws.
No, that was the difference.
But about
still,
the only difference.
Yeah,
Is that a
6 points?
I mean, you can be yeah, well, they were able to make a jumper. Great, it's still only 6 points.
That's not enough, yeah. When Maryland scores 18 points and they only score 6, that you're already in a hole.
Yeah, and that hole just grew at the half. They were down 37-14. That's a lot to overcome.
Yeah.
They went 4-24 from the field in the first half.
Oof.
So that's not good.
Yeah.
What really probably cost them was the turnover battle. They really lost that in the first half. It was 14-2. Yeah, and then Maryland scored 17 points off of that. Nebraska didn't score any.
Yeah.
But Creighton, they came out in the second half. They looked ready to play.
Right? They scored, I mean, not by a lot, but they scored more points than Maryland did in both the third and fourth quarter, just like Creighton did. But again, these teams can't start playing in the second half.
No.
And that's what keeps happening, I feel like.
It really does. And for these teams that are looking for an at-large bid, probably in their in the NCAA tournament, you really got to start kicking it up a notch.
Yeah, this is the time. You can't. It's right now or never.
Yeah, and I mean, both teams lost on their home court. That's rough.
Right.
I mean, you can be oh, they were ranked teams, but that's still really rough.
Right.
Especially when you've beaten them already
You've
on
beaten
the
them
road.
on the road, and you have your home court advantage. You have your fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just to look at some of the stats that happened, Jazz Shelley finished with 10 this game, 6 rebounds. The first game against Maryland, she had 29, kind of a difference, but actually that's pretty good for Jazz Shelley lately. She's been focusing, it sounds, more on the defensive side of things. Mm-hmm. Especially since, you think...
Yeah,
because
Allison Widener. I mean, yeah, I mean, who knows? But as you know, Allison Widener is out for the season. And from what I've noticed, she's a big defensive player, and she gets a lot of steals, forces a lot of turnovers. And I know Amy Williams said that Jazz is focusing more on the defensive end, so perhaps that's why, she hasn't been scoring as much. Maybe she's kind of, filling in that gap with Allison gone. I'm not sure, but I mean, like we said, Jazz can score a lot of points, and lately she hasn't been scoring as many as we know her to be capable of.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly isn't what happened with Maryland the first time, or what happened, for instance, in the Big Ten tournament last season. Amy Williams did say she still has great floor vision, and she is able to make plays. And that's definitely true. Mm-hmm. But she noted that she's just been locked in on the defensive plan, and maybe she's so set on that she's not taking shots like she normally would. I think another part of that is Alexis Markowski is not out, but she's in 100% right now.
Mm-hmm. So she didn't play as many minutes that she normally would.
No,
right?
she only played 15 minutes against Maryland, but she grabbed 10 rebounds in that time.
Right.
So that's fantastic.
She's an effective player, so it's if she plays the minutes she can play, it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and I mean, they need her to get healthy. They can't overuse her or potentially injure her any more than she is, because they need her for that Big Ten tournament, and they need her for later this season. But yeah, I obviously Amy Williams disappointed in her post-game presser. She said, obviously, it was not a good first half of basketball, and I was proud that we had some kids that I thought came off the bench and really fought in the second half for us. She specifically mentioned Kendall Coley. Kendall played for 10 minutes, and she grabbed 6 rebounds, had 4 points. I'd also want to point out Annika Stewart. She also came off the bench, had 19 minutes, had 9 rebounds, 9 points, and a block. That's really good for her.
That's a lot for her. She doesn't usually score that much or even get that much playing time. So the fact that she scored that many points, really impressive.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, they really had to defend Cheyenne Sellers and Diamond Miller from Maryland. We mentioned that in our last podcast. Both had big games. Sellers had a double-double with 20 points and 11 rebounds. Miller had 18 points. Got to stop them.
Right.
Got to stop them early. And then they started, well, mentally they must have started their game in the second half almost.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. But they really need to overcome this slow start because it is not doing them literally any favors.
Especially because their next opponent
Is current number 10, but probably going up in the rankings, I would guess, quite a bit, Iowa.
Iowa, yes. Iowa, who just knocked off Ohio State and broke their 19-game winning streak.
Yeah.
So that'll be a tough opponent.
Yeah, I mean, they were number 2 in the country when they knocked them off. That's a lot of that's on Caitlin Clark, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, she recorded her 8th triple-double, and she became, like, with her career 8 triple-doubles, she is that is the most by a male or female in the Big Ten history. So she's pretty dominant player, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't really know how much we have to go into how good Caitlin Clark is.
Right, it's a pretty well-known fact.
Everyone knows that at that point. We're probably going to preview it later this week in another podcast. But she's really good. She's really, really good. They're going to have to defend her. She's not the only one you need to defend.
Right.
Against Ohio State, Monica Sanoa, I don't know. She had 22 points. That you can't let that go either.
No, it's like overall a very good team. Well, obviously Caitlin Clark is the star, but you have a very good Iowa team all around. So you can't start in the second half. You have to start in the very first
they need
quarter.
They need to get going from the get-go.
Right.
Like,
just like Creighton.
just
needs
like
to-
Creighton. The similarities are almost like astounding. I honestly don't have a whole lot of words other than what we said, I guess.
Right. Well, I hope both teams can get a better start.
Yeah, I mean, Creighton's got a chance tonight. Nebraska has, I mean, they don't play Iowa till Saturday. They
Right,
have.
so they have some time.
They got some time to figure it out.
Reflect. Prepare.
We'll be looking back at the Providence game later this week and looking ahead to Iowa because it's so far out at this point.
Right.
But if you're listening at omaha.com, thank you. If you can check us out basically wherever you listen to podcasts. But we're going to close this one out now. So thank you for listening. I'm Josie.
And I'm Eileen.
Bye.